Chetan sir, how would you look at the year that's about to end, 2025?
I think this should be seen as a failure of Indian neighborhood first policy. I'm saying this because if you are claiming to be a regional and global power, and if there is chaos spreading across your neighborhood, that to your immediate neighborhood where you share immediate borders, it shows that the diplomacy has been missing.
Isn't it convenient for India now? Because previously we would think twice, who are we dealing with? Is it the civilian government in Pakistan or the army establishment? Now we know who to deal with. So doesn't it make it easier for India to know who is in control of Pakistan?
I think Trump has taken this to his personal ego as well. Because if you look at the way in which Trump has claimed, the number of times he has claimed that he played a role in the ceasefire, that shows that it has that a personal ambition of Donald Trump, to be seen as a mediator, as a peace broker.
Okay, sir, 2025 was the defining moment in India-Pakistan relations. Would you agree?
It was, and here I basically slightly differ from the opinions expressed before. Was our goal to start the Operation Sindoor, the annihilation of Pakistani army? No. Was our goal to basically annihilate the deep state? Absolutely not.
But in the initial part of this podcast, you were praising the foreign policy.
There are two aspects. Our foreign policy vis-a-vis how our energy diplomacy is happening, how our military diplomacy is happening, and vis-a-vis how we've done it with our neighbors is very different.
If every web series is good to be about Northeast politics and Myanmar,
Three back-to-back series.
three back-to-back series, so Patal Lok to Family, that is also come.
And which was the third one?
Family Man, I keep
Family Man,
Patal Lok है
Delhi का है.
You saved him. Hello and welcome to Unacademy. 2025 was an eventful year in the recent past. Donald Trump took over as the President of the United States of America for the second and the last time. And with his policies, the world descended into a chaos. General Asim Munir elevated himself as the field marshal and is now the de facto ruler of Pakistan. The situation along the line of actual control between India and China is still unresolved. The war in Gaza is over and not yet over. The situation between Russia and Ukraine is still continuing. We have assembled here to discuss all the important geopolitical events of 2025 in which India has played a role or India was impacted. Joining us today is India's foremost international relations expert, Chetan sir. We have Abhishek sir and Mukesh sir joining us too. And let's start with Chetan sir. Chetan sir, how would you look at the year that's about to end, 2025?
This year, according to me, has been one of the most disruptive years because the world order, as we know, the post-World War era order, the Cold War, post-Cold War era order, it is being fundamentally broken down. First, it was China, which was directly trying to dismantle the rules-based order. Now we have United States, which was expected to uphold rules-based international principles. It is actively trying to dismantle this very structure. And the policies of Trump, be it the economic policies, the foreign policy of Trump, has been affecting each and every region, from Europe to South Asia to Latin America. And this is something which will have long-term consequences. Sarma sir, you mentioned Trump, this could be the last term. But the lasting effect of his policies is something that would reverberate for decades to come. And let's see once Mukesh sir and Abhishek sir talks about their views, then let's have a discussion on it.
Abhishek sir.
Sir, somehow I have a very contrasting point to view in that the more the things change, they remain the same. US turned out to be an unreliable power again, and the all-weather friend Russia was standing by us. So it's been an interesting year. The patterns may have been disrupted, but overall, the powers which we could rely on were standing by us. And the US tariff war and the way Saudi Arabia and Pakistan are aligned together. That is an interesting angle which we should discuss and we will discuss.
Perfect. Sir, it was a tumultuous year, one of the most strange years in international diplomacy in the recent times. But what I feel is that this sets the template for the next years to come. And this is not a one-off event. And while the country's entire policy of strategic autonomy, when you talk about India's strategic autonomy, that had been a kind of a central focal point, that was challenged by the world powers starting from the US. And India has shown agility in mending ties with China. But at the same time, what everybody believed that multilateralism is the way to move ahead, now that is being replaced by minilateralism. So small groupings everywhere, they are going to be the next thing which is going to dominate in the years to come. So it is interesting as we move ahead.
There's an ancient Chinese curse which says, may you live in interesting times. And these are, I suppose, the interesting times. Chetan sir, let's start with one of the most important defining moments of 2025. Pahalgam attack, followed by Operation Sindoor, then followed by claims by Donald Trump that he was the one who brokered peace between India and Pakistan. How do you look at the significance of Operation Sindoor and the relations between India and Pakistan?
Now I think we have the advantage of hindsight. If you see why Pahalgam attack happened, the way it was orchestrated, I think there was a clear intent of the deep state to escalate the tensions with India. Because the Indian response through Operation Sindoor has in many ways benefited the Pakistani state. And that to the ambition of one man, Asim Munir. The way he has consolidated power within the Pakistani establishment, this is something which we have never seen before. Yes, Pakistan has been through a lot of military coups. It was a well-known secret, an open secret of sorts, that the deep state always calls the shots. But the kind of changes that have happened, the constitutional amendment, the 27th constitutional amendment, and the lifelong immunity that Asim Munir has given to himself, and the control he has gained over all the branches of the armed forces by appointing himself as the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff Committee. This would give him unprecedented powers, including over the nuclear arsenal. Yes, it was known that the army chief would call the shots in the eventuality of a nuclear conflict, but at least the civilian government had a degree of role to play in the nuclear command structure. And you had the Pakistani Supreme Court, at least once in a while acting as a system of checks and balances, reining in these autocratic leaders. But now Asim Munir in one blow has undermined the Supreme Court itself by establishing a new federal constitutional court. So this cements Asim Munir's position, and this could be very dangerous for India and for the region as well. This could further the long-held goals of the Pakistani state, which is to bleed India through 1,000 cuts. And now they have the backing of the Western powers, at least from the US. So that is where I think Asim Munir has played, keeping in mind the White House, and ensured that the White House has his back by even offering the resources of Pakistan in return. And Pakistan has no hesitation in being a client state of the US. So that is where I think the tables have slightly turned. But what India has done through Operation Sindoor is that we have carried out a doctrinal shift in the way in which we deal with Pakistan. We have drawn those red lines very clearly that any attack from the terror groups based out of Pakistan would be treated as an act of war. It would be responded accordingly. So the role of the US, as you said, in mediating the ceasefire, as Trump has claimed, it has been clearly dismissed by India. India has said it was something that we worked out with Pakistan bilaterally at the DGMO level. But I think Trump has taken this to his personal ego as well. Because if you look at the way in which Trump has claimed, the number of times he has claimed that he played a role in the ceasefire, that shows that it has that personal ambition of Donald Trump, to be seen as a mediator, as a peace broker. And he somehow uses tariffs to convince everyone. But I think for India, the challenge would be to manage a new Pakistan where one man is in almost total control of the armed forces, of the entire terror infrastructure they have created, and the nuclear arsenal. So
Isn't it convenient for India now? Because previously we would think twice, who are we dealing with? Is it the civilian government in Pakistan or the army establishment? Now we know who to deal with. So doesn't it make it easier for India to know who is in control of Pakistan and deal with it accordingly?
But again, when someone like Asim Munir is in power, if you look at Asim Munir's background, he's someone who has held long-term hatred against India. And this is largely driven by the propaganda within the Pakistani state, which has existed for a long time. And Asim Munir is someone who believes in that ideological, civilizational kind of a war, which he referred to as well.
How is it different from his predecessors in the Pakistani deep state? You will always feel the hatred against India. So how is Asim Munir's hatred different from his predecessors?
If you look at Pervez Musharraf, for example,
he was the one who started the 1999 war
Yes, but he later turned out to be a very rational leader, someone with whom India could actually engage with, be it Vajpayee or later Manmohan Singh. Both of them could establish those channels of communication with Pervez Musharraf. And he was even willing to put all the issues on the table, including Kashmir, including terrorism.
So Pakistan was always clear about
India was against discussing Kashmir unless terrorism was discussed. And Pervez Musharraf eventually showed that willingness, which led to the army, standing up against Pervez Musharraf. He lost that loyalty with the army itself. But Asim Munir has managed to control the higher echelons of power within the army. He has that loyal following within the deep state. And that is what raises the concern. For the next 10, 15 years, let's say Asim Munir manages to remain in power. He somehow manages to hold on to authority. And that would be a long-term strategic threat for India.
how do we deal with Pakistan, Abhishek sir?
So, with regards to Pakistan, looking at daily attacks, one thing is very clear that state-sponsored terrorism is not going to end. And the actors which are working out of UK, out of Pakistan, they want to shake the tree. And this will be the year in which everybody was shaking their faith. Be it Iran, be it Israel, be it Pakistan. And Pakistan could see a certain, as said, that Asim Munir's power is exponentially much higher than anyone else which was there. How do you deal with Pakistan? It's a question which is quite complex. There's no right and wrong answer here, but I do say that we have to be a little bit more stern. Operation Sindoor was a certain, you can say, change in strategy that we will respond with the same type of force. But again,
But this is something that we did after Uri, after
is it that diplomatic channels with Pakistan is not the right way to go forward? I'm not saying that we have to go to war with Pakistan, but we had diplomatically isolated Pakistan very well in the past. Why? Maybe 2024 was that year in which we had created that FATS pressure also and the IMF pressure also, World Bank pressure also. But Asim Munir just changed the tables with the US alignment and understanding. So Pakistan has to be dealt with both on the ground changes and diplomatic changes, which cannot be just one. We were following one for 24, 25. 25, 26, we have to do something on the ground. We have to understand one thing, that Pakistan's nature is not cheap.
So if there is a request from DGMO of Pakistan that we are willing to stop this brief conflict with you, should India have a
Vichy pass. The biggest mistake we made was that you trusted Pakistan. And I think it's a very simplistic and a very emotional argument, but I would embody everybody's sentiment here that we are trusted Pakistan humanitaries. And if we are just diplomatically isolating and trying to work for a third party to do something about it, it's not that we just go into POK and take POK. We have to strengthen our borders. We have to make sure that we're ready for all forms of aggression. It cannot be that this whole system works on goodwill. That, okay, DGMO has said Pakistani civilian government as it is useless as of right now. They're in economic crisis, but still they want to fund this war. So we should have a nuanced strategy where we have strengthening of our borders. We understand that every eventuality is on the table. And at the same point of time, do what we do diplomat. This war has to be fought at all levels. It's like a Cold War type situation that we have to be ready for every eventuality. We cannot trust Pakistan. And even Asim Munir, if he says that we are ready to negotiate, that is all optics and eyewash for years. So the way to answer Pakistan is a multi-dimensional approach with on-the-ground changes. We still have a lot of sectors in our Western sector which are okay. We should, if we have a good relationship with Israel, we should take that technology. We should have that technology on those wars. We should use technology to make sure that at least our soldiers are not dying because of this trust deficit or this illusion of trust.
I think this is where we need to appreciate India's approach towards Taliban. The major shift that we have made in our policy, it has really ruffled feathers in Rawalpindi. They are really shocked, taken aback. They were probably not expecting India's direct and close engagement with the Taliban. So Pakistan feels cornered at this point of time.
So would you then say that the Deputy Foreign Minister of Afghanistan, Taliban, coming to India, Amir Khan Muntaqi, that was the time which coincided with Pakistani army launching an attack on Afghanistan soil, presumably because you are harboring the Pakistani Tehrik-e-Taliban leaders. And was it coincidence, or was it deliberate that this is the timing that we will choose because your foreign minister is visiting India and trying to restore some sort of diplomatic relations?
In geopolitics, there are no coincidences, especially if covert angle is involved. So I think Pakistan was really clearly trying to send out a message both to Delhi and Kabul that we don't appreciate this alignment between India and Taliban. And I think India played very well there without officially recognizing the Taliban regime, because that would risk international isolation against India as well. Without giving that formal recognition, our ability to engage the Taliban, provide them aid and assistance, and keep them in our good books would help in bringing that pressure on Pakistan from both the sides.
Okay, sir, 2025 was the defining moment in India-Pakistan relations. Would you agree?
It was. And here I basically slightly differ from the opinions expressed before. Because we are slightly obsessed with diplomatic isolation of Pakistan. Now, that is something India has been obsessing over for a long period of time, and we have to understand that this is not possible. Other countries also have interest in Pakistan because you cannot ignore the geostrategic location of Pakistan. The access to warm waters is something that global powers have been thinking about for almost a century now. So Pakistan, you cannot ensure, and it is not a zero-sum game, that if US has or Russia has good ties with Pakistan, then we can't have good ties with Russia. That goes parallelly. But when it comes to Operation Sindhu, what happened? Now, it is a fact that a ceasefire was called based upon the request of the DGO. Should we have agreed to the ceasefire? Absolutely yes. Because what was our ambition? What was our goal? Was our goal to start the Operation Sindhu, the annihilation of Pakistani army? No. Was our goal to basically annihilate the deep state? Absolutely not. Our goal was basically to dismantle the terror infrastructure, not permanently so. You cannot do that. It was basically to show them what we can do. Now, you had put an argument that it happened previously as well. In the case of Uri, in the case of Palakot strikes, it happened as well. But if you observe the trend there has been an ever-increasing punitive action from India. And this will always yield a positive result because come what may, come what the information warfare that Pakistan has as an eyewash, they know the real damages that they fix. Now, right now, they are a good client state of US, so US will fund their military hardware as well. China will also do that. Turkey is also setting up that. But as long as India keeps punishing Pakistan, as long as India tells them that this is the punitive cost that you have to pay. And please understand what happened in Operation Sindhu. Next time when a conflict or a skirmish does break out, it won't be restricted to that. Now, earlier actions were restricted to the line of control and the international border. This time we actually punished them up to the banks of River Indus. If the entire conflict could have been carried out for even 24 hours, then I think all the air bases were in target. And mind you, we are undermining or we are underplaying the amount of damage that Pakistan has faced. And this is where our information warfare has to take a lead. We are not keeping up with the information warfare that Pakistan does. For example, our diplomatic services that we have. Now, they are severely understaffed across the globe. Whereas in the case of Pakistan, much smaller country, much smaller demography, they have a strong diplomatic presence. Even during Operation Sindhu, you would have seen that all the global media houses, they were being addressed directly by the top diplomats of Pakistan, the top military generals of Pakistan. Whereas in India, we maintain that strategic silence, that we don't reveal that much. So what our goal was, we have achieved that. And we have also shown that this is how we escalate the situation. Remember, 26/11 has, we recently commemorated that sad event. Now, what was our response at that point of life? To look at the response that we have generated now. Now, what we have showed is that even one casualty that if it occurs, we will declare it or we will consider it as a declaration of war. Now, declaration of a war by a state is a big thing that cannot be taken up lightly. So that is where India has completely changed the paradigm. We cannot diplomatically isolate Pakistan. When it comes to the case of awareness raising of the global community that this is what this country does. So that is where our effort has to be ongoing. For example, he talked about the FATF sanctions. FATF sanctions were imposed. What did Pakistan? It simply changed the name, right? Lashkar-e-Toiba became TRX, a kind of an English name, the resistance aspect. so that it is much more friendlier to the Western media. So our outreach has to increase, and also we should not be so touchy based upon what others are saying. We should take a leaf out of China's bouquet. I'm not saying China does everything perfectly, but look at what China does in terms of its global actions or any action, be it Taiwan or anything like that. It does not care what the world does. All it cares for is what the outcome is and how we should achieve it. So we are going to define that going ahead into the future, and I don't see any fault in terms of what our policy outreach for Pakistan has been. Yes, in terms of information warfare, we have a long way to travel.
You were talking about China. What China does differently that you're so proud of?
I'm not proud of that. I'm saying that in the word of
For instance, when you say China doesn't care,
yeah.
how do you make it out?
So, for example, when we talk about the Galwan incident, now that was a clear-cut violation of international laws. It was a clear-cut violation of Indo-China Pact as well. But there, what did we see over a period of time? We are still not clear about the region of or whether actually there has been an ingress from the Chinese side. China basically keeps on creating a new normal, allows the world that time to get used to the new law, and then it elevates the lead. Whereas we are overtly concerned that whether we are okay with this new normal, what is our role? Are we being over-aggressive? Should we be more conservative? Should we try again the diplomatic channels and so on? Now, in countries like US, in countries where you don't have this problem immediately in your neighborhood, it can serve there.
But China also does not brief the envoys of other countries regarding the situation with India.
Absolutely, yes. So that is where you have an authoritarian regime. And that is why I'm saying I'm not completely asking us to copy what China does. But some of the aspects of the Chinese policy in terms of the foreign policy matters. You make yourself strong enough and you shut down the outside noise. You keep on working towards improving your defense, for example. When it comes to Pakistan.
But you were saying we need to strengthen our Indian Foreign Service so that we can defend India's position in the international arena.
Actually, I would not agree because we have seen a new boldness in our foreign policy. The foreign minister has created a new normal. We have moved from non-alignment to all alignment. I agree with this point that China has a certain position in the world, being the manufacturer of the world, that it cannot get. India, being a country which is dependent on oil from the Gulf and boast of this oil dependence, energy dependence, leads us to this understanding that we have to also look at the optics. But I would say that in the past 2 years, or at least for the past 5 years, we've been seeing a shift. We've been very pragmatic, we've been very practical. It's not that we have to leave Aman Ki Asha, it's not that but we have to also understand that the Aman Ki Asha has to happen for both sides. So, the foreign minister and the foreign policy of India has evolved. It is now a little bit more bold. What we did with...
Then why do you take after Operation Sindoor, India seemed to be diplomatically isolated? Would you agree, Chetan sir?
To some extent, especially from Western capitals, maybe they also had a bone to pick with India.
Because we were silent on Russia,
on the Ukraine war. Probably they were playing that game.
If you look at the coverage of the Western media, they would project India as an aggressor in Operation Sindoor.
But India has drawn lessons from this experience, very quick lessons, and we have initiated some recent reforms. Mukesh sir was correctly pointing out that our services are understaffed and we don't build a good narrative that projects India's viewpoint. So recently, the INB ministry, just last week, they have started completely reforming the IIS cadre, the Indian Information Service. And they are going to increase the number of vacancies. And for the first time, IAS officers will be deployed in embassies abroad to build the Indian media narrative, to engage with Western media outlets, to shape global opinion.
What was the need for us to send parliamentarians to different capitals of the world and engage with them and try and make them understand?
The objective would be twofold. One is to send a united message that the nation stands together, irrespective of party lines. Because these all-party delegations...
Why not take the cue from China and shut your ears?
I'm not advocating for absolutely copying everything that China does. But there are few things that China does which is noteworthy for us. For example, if I give the instance of Operation Sindoor itself. Now, after the initial onslaught, we were slightly calibrative about it, that there should be damage, yes, what is the damage, and the we did not put out our information immediately. China also does not put out its information. But then, the damages which are posed, that is where the Indian way has to come forward. You cannot simply copy it, but the Indian way, what he's saying about spreading the message outwards. What you are talking about, the copying of China. Look at what China is following for its Taiwan policy. There are oppositions from Japan, there are oppositions from US, but as per the new security doctrine that US has basically put out, it is acceptable to US because China has been hell-bent that no, this is unacceptable to us. Today, none of the countries across the world, because the heft of China is so high, none of the countries across the world have that kind of diplomatic power, or to say that guts in very crude language, to say that no, we have a separate Taiwan policy.
But it has taken 60 years for that. Yeah, some Zhengshek to Bao, that movement has been with the rise of China as a manufacturer of the world. That has also taken a lot of time. But change in international.
And Mukesh sir, for India to completely ignore global opinion, it won't be possible. Pragmatic for us.
We have been doing that with regards to Russian oil. That's a very good strategy we followed. Our interest comes first. India comes first. We will take oil from Russia. We are diversifying. That was a very good stance. That is where the Chinese model comes to, that we are going to take oil from Russia. Our stance is you're taking LPG from them.
Is it because we realize that since European countries are also importing oil from Russia, we are not the only buyer?
And they continue so.
Even now, continue to do so.
Hey, that's well larger issue that I would point out. What we had observed in 2025 from late 2024 itself is the internationalization of domestic politics that we are seeing in Europe as well, in US as well. We are seeing it in India as well. Now, this is where getting too fidgety with your foreign policy has come as a regular law. Take the case of US tariffs. What is it? It is the domestic politics of US. The corn belt being catered to, the Bible belt being catered to, and you have punitive actions on countries like India. Similarly, in the case of India, what happened, whether Donald Trump did play a role in mediating the ceasefire or not, why did it become such a touchy topic? Because you have the domestic politics that you're catered. I agree that no Prime Minister of India would accept to the fact that there was a ceasefire or a mediation initiated by US, but we saw big Kargil. We talked about US's role. Now, India did not have to say that yes, Donald Trump came in and he basically made us shake our hands. But was there a call made by Marco Rubio on both sides or not? Absolutely yes. Now, till that point of time, wasn't it the case that Shehbaz Sharif was talking about initiating a dirty war? It was there. So, is there a US role? At least 20% or 10% it is there. But today we are not in a position to accept. When it comes to even our...
Because you cater to your domestic
politics. When you talk about even, for example, maneuvering in the case of US tariffs. Now, I think, it is my point of view, that it would have been much easier 10 years ago or 20 years ago, when you did not have so much of scrutiny about each and every statement that Donald Trump has issued. Donald Trump has... And he knows that. And this is what he's catering to, that each and every word of mine will be picked up across the globe. And we saw the case with the basmati, right, the rice dumping. Now he has made a statement. Now, if India doesn't issue a retaliatory statement, within a couple of days you will observe that there is a large backlash because farmers are important vote bank everywhere. And that is one of the reasons for the right-leaning, sudden right-leaning of Europe as well. Take a case from Melanie to Marine Le Pen in France. Everywhere you will observe, it is the catering to the domestic audience, the domestic politics, which is making the entire international diplomacy a very, very tough topic. And those countries you will observe that who have either a unitary form of government or they don't care for that, they are still able to navigate these shores. Not saying that we should become like them. But for countries like India, we are a chaotic democracy and rightfully so. It will take us some time.
But this is where I have an issue with the Indian policy with Donald Trump. We have been cowing down, we have been bending down to Trump's pressure tactics. We are not issuing open retaliatory statements. Because if you look at, let's say, Germany, Trump has recently made statements that Germany has been complicit. And they've mentioned this in their national security strategy as well, that Europeans should look after their own security. Germany came out with direct criticism of the policy itself. And India has not done this till date. be it with regard to the ceasefire claims or the tariffs or any of the.
No, on ceasefire claims, we have been adamant right from
We have
day
been
one.
insisting Trump was not involved, but we are not countering directly, retaliating against Trump himself.
Maybe that's what diplomacy is.
No, I think India should have taken a firm stand, because the more you bend, so with someone like Trump in office,
But you have not bent.
we have not directly countered or challenged the Trump statements.
No,
Never.
This brings me to another important question in India-US relations. United States once was very close to Pakistan. We were penalized for charting out our own independent foreign policy, a non-aligned foreign policy. Then from Bill Clinton onwards, George Bush, Barack Obama, ending India's nuclear appetite with the signing of 123 agreement, the 2008 nuclear deal. Do you think 2025 was a year when India and the Indian state would have realized that this United States is not a trustworthy friend?
Absolutely. I think that is the sense you get. Maybe India is trying to wait it out. India knows that
And
this
then
could be the only.
If the answer is yes, then how do we deal with the United States?
I think India should have pursued a more multi-aligned approach. For example, let's say with tariffs, our concern is about losing the market in the US, which is critical for our exports. I think looking at diversification of exports to other markets, Southeast Asia, East Asia, there are FTAs which are pending from a long time. FTA with New Zealand.
But none of these FTAs have served and benefited India.
The FTA with UAE has done very well. The limited trade agreement with Australia has done very well. Our exports have really increased in the last couple of years. Especially the new deals that have been worked out under the Modi administration. It has worked very well for India's exports. So India should have pursued a more independent policy here instead of trying to ignore the statements being made by Trump. We have ignored it many times. The only response has been that it was independently worked out between India and Pakistan. We have never directly said that Trump is.
So forget about
not
India,
in the
Pakistan and the conflict. What about the tariffs? What about immigration? What about basmati rice that he was talking about?
Agar here. With regards to he'll be very firm against see Trump he's a rational actor, but he's a pinicky man. We have a very big diaspora population.
Why do you say he's a rational actor?
He's not an irrational actor. He's a neo-fascist type personality.
He knows what he's doing.
He knows what
He's a businessman after all.
he's not a solid golf player. So he has developed a certain personality that caters to the Republican and that neo-fascist movement in the US also. One thing which we have to also take into consideration is that Trump's response against India would be taken out on the diaspora population in India, in the US of Indians. So that is a very big chunk of Indians who are residing in the US would see the brunt of a very irrational shower from our side. So there could be hate them very quickly coming up. If Trump becomes anti-India within seconds, you will see multiple forms of hate crimes happening across New York. If not the blue states, it will be the red states for sure. So the difference between Germany and India would be diaspora population.
And we also have to keep in mind that, yes, it wasn't the case that the Prime Minister himself has issued a retaliatory statement. But you would see a statement was made on the floor of Parliament. Now that is as accountable as one can be. When Trump issued the tariffs for the first time, the Ministry of External Affairs came out with a detailed list of what US does and what Europe does. Yes, we have not been overtly aggressive about it. And it has not been covered in the Western media. And that is also because of what happens in India tends to remain in this part of the Eastern Hemisphere. What happens in Europe and Germany, that is easily picked up. And we cannot undermine the era that we are living in. Look at what Mexico is doing. Mexico has imposed a 50% tariff on India just to please your country.
That's not a new set of.
It is not a new set of norms, but then when it comes to auto industry, the spare parts of the auto industry, that is where it is going to be impacted now. The previous set of norms that were there since 2040 itself. But the new for the auto industry, and please understand, auto industry has put a lot of cascading.
And Mexico is a key market for our auto exports.
Now, when it comes to diversification of exports, so upon the imposition of US tariffs, 3 sectors were expected to be the most impacted. One is the shrimp and the pisciculture. One was the textile. Other was the gems and jewelry sector. Now, when it comes to the shrimp export, there we have expedited the approvals and many of the European nations, including Russia as well. Now, there more clearances have been given to the Indian fish markets. So we are seeing a kind of a normalization in terms of the export basket in strip. Gems and jewelry, there it is slow moving industry. It is not as if immediately you can create a demand. With countries like UAE also entering the fray, so it is not a kind of a immediate switch. But there also we are seeing an agility. It is a textile sector that we have to worry about because there's a big competition in our neighborhood with whom we don't share a good tie as of now. That is Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is continuously going to provide a competition to India in the novel as well.
With regards to the point of 25 being a year, it is a year of de-mystification of the West. So for the past, we can say 5 decades, after Cold War politics, US had a very holy position. West always had a holy position for the East, and in India, we always looked up to this understanding. But this year has proved that our early apprehensions, the world has not changed as much as we think of it. US cannot be trusted. The way the West Asian politics is working out as of right now, we can't just have one bilateral partner and rely on that itself. And the way NATO itself is getting diluted in that regard. So India should realize within this year that it has to develop an independent policy which is not aligned with, we can't have a Pakistan approach.
Now, what is that agenda going to be? How are we going to proceed with that? For example, even in India-Pakistan conflict, you saw that it was not an India-Pakistan conflict. There was China involved.
Right.
There was Turkey involved. And if not Russia, which is the other country, we can bank on Russia all the time, but Russia itself may not be able to support us the way it used to in the past.
Right.
It's also drifting towards China,
China as well, yeah.
coming under the tutelage of China. Which is that other country that we can trust and bank upon?
Probably Israel, if you're talking particularly about military support. Israel, France, these have been reliable partners. Don't forget, France was one of the few countries which did not condemn our nuclear tests. Russia was the other one and Israel was the other one. But now Israel also has been placing its conditions. Israel wants India to explicitly recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization. And they are trying to link this with their support for countering Pakistan-based terrorism. But apart from this new line that we are seeing from Israel, Israel has been a very reliable military partner, be it for defense technology, advanced weapons, same with France. So these are two partners whom you can trust.
But again, sir, I would say buy the defender for other partners. We have to have a multilateral.
Because till the time we are self-reliant, we have to be dependent on our...
Where we realize to work actively is beyond all this and going to the grassroots, people to people connect and people to people partner. So that is where the soft diplomacy, for example, why do we share such good relations with Israel? Now, Israelis, they come in large numbers in India and they oftentimes feel welcomed as well. So when you build that people to people connect, you make the people welcome, you organize road shows in various different countries, which India has started doing now, as Chetan sir mentioned. Now, what it will do is, it will create a kind of a soft power image that come all tourists. So that is where our tourism policies, they have been slightly restrictive in terms of the visa on arrival facilities that we provide. For example, we are losing a lot of tourism to Southeast Asian nations, which should not be the case. And India is a destination and India is a country that people should want to be in. So that is where all the European nations particularly.
Now, when you say we welcome Israelis, who is not welcome in India?
No. So what I mean by welcoming Israelis is that generally it is a part of that diaspora as well. After the service in the military, that is what is a fixed tenure. Now they do come and spend months. You will find Israeli tourists in various different pockets of India. And that is because the goodwill which India has also sustained over a long period of life, our diaspora has sustained that. And that is where our diaspora strength, which is we receive the largest remittance.
When did this happen? 93 onwards or even before that?
Even prior to that. That's what I'm saying.
Even before that, we didn't have a diplomatic...
1990 onwards, 93 onwards, there was a formalization of the dice. But we did this prior to that. Our soft power, the expansion of that soft power, that has slightly been limited in the recent times. That is what I think Prime Minister also made a statement in front of the fraternity that expand the ideas of Gandhi. Why isn't it that Gandhi is being portrayed across the world as it should be? And that is where I think the national will, the national power.
By that logic, we should have had fantastic relations with Saudi and other Gulf countries, which we have. But then the Saudi-Pakistan
Soft
pact.
power has its limitations. While I'm a big proponent of soft power, it does have its limitations. You take US, for example. India has such a large diaspora, which has a influence on White House, on the Congress as well. But still, one person is enough, one party in power is enough to turn that around. I think more pragmatic relations based on trade, based on aligned interests is what will sustain a relationship with added soft power.
So while an untapped area, or I would say now India is exploring, is Buddhist diplomacy. That we have Buddhism as a very straightforward connection with Southeast Asia, ASEAN countries, even China and Vietnam. So we have had two major conferences that worked out quite well in that regard, which is conference in Delhi itself. But we have to further build up. In the IONA world, in the Indian Ocean Organization world, we can use Buddhism quite well.
Amir Khan's movies are very popular in China, yet we are not able to mold the Chinese publicity.
In the case of China, you know that everyone knows that what is fed to the mass is not in our petrol as well. So that is a very calibrated amount of information which is populated. And India's image in general. And please understand, it is not the case that Chinese earlier were very receptive to Indian rise of Indian power. They were always a bit skeptical about another power rising in such close vicinity, which has not been the case post Second World War in the entire region. So China is a different ballgame, and this is the first time that a country has risen so quickly in the global sphere. So it is going to pose challenges left, right, and center, be it for the US, be it for India. But our worldview, other than China, what is happening in the immediate neighborhood? For example, thankfully, our ties with Sri Lanka are on a better curve right now. But when you take a look at even Maldives, we have had a rough phase in the past couple of years. Take a look at Bangladesh, take a look at Nepal.
The whole neighborhood has been very chaotic.
That's what my next segment and the last segment of this episode should be. Our neighborhood is in crisis. The Gen Z protests in Nepal, the fall of the government,
The civil war in
Bangladesh
Myanmar.
descended into chaos, the Myanmar, Maldives now more or less the situation has stabilized. How do we look at our neighborhood?
I think this should be seen as a failure of Indian neighborhood first policy. I'm saying this because if you are claiming to be a regional and global power, and if there is chaos spreading across your neighborhood, that to your immediate neighborhood where you share immediate borders, it shows that the diplomacy has been missing. The presence of India has been missing to stabilize these countries. Henry Kissinger was a strong believer that you can't think of global influence and global reach unless and until you stabilize your homeland and the region around your homeland. So, be it the economic crisis in Sri Lanka, India did very well to support Sri Lanka later. But what India could have done otherwise for regional integration, maybe through organizations like SARC, better economic growth, better opportunities across the region. I think that is somewhere India is missing out on the opportunities that are present in South Asia.
And vis-a-vis Bangladesh, putting all eggs in one basket.
One basket, relying on one leader, one party. Even in Myanmar, our position has been always to look at Myanmar from China's prism. We were always concerned heavily on the northeast region, the border security threats, aligning only with the military regime there. And now we have very limited contacts with the rebel groups, which are now capturing territory. And there is a possibility of Myanmar balkanizing as well, which would be a nightmare for India. Nepal as well. We were caught off guard when the Gen Z protests broke out. And our options have been very limited in the neighborhood. Again, maybe India can't be blamed entirely because some of these countries have had their social divides which are very strong. Like Bangladesh, it has been heavily polarized right from the beginning. Same with Nepal. It has a history of instability. But somewhere, I mean, you will realize the fact that these countries are always on the boil. It somewhere comes down to India not playing its cards right, not helping in stabilizing these nations.
No, if the political class is corrupt in Nepal, what is India's role there?
You need to create those leverages. Diplomacy is all about leverage. If let's say, if we could,
maybe we didn't even have an inkling of these protests breaking out. We had to sit and
that's a failure of your intelligence and your diplomacy. In Bangladesh, what was happening was very clear. From 2022 itself, the unpopularity of Sheikh Hasina was becoming very evident. And yet we sided firmly with Sheikh Hasina, not once trying to build.
And do you think sending her back would somehow make a relationship
now that damage
better?
is already done, now that you have given asylum, to send her back, knowing what would be the fate. That would again send out a very wrong message. Because how would leaders trust you again? How would they put faith in you if you deport them back where they are likely to face a death punishment? So I think that is not the right response. But the fact that we couldn't work with Mohammad Yunus's regime, despite having that influence in
But
Bangladesh.
if he's making inflammatory statements on Chinese soil against India, how are you going to deal with that person?
We should have lured Bangladesh with investments, with better opportunities, which Bangladesh was eagerly looking for. The youth protests, which was at least to some extent organic, was based on issues like employment, inflation, and the lack of opportunities. I think that is where India should have reached out from the beginning. From the start, our approach was slightly hostile to the Jamaat. We should have engaged the Jamaat as well. And India has treated Jamaat as a radical entity, which it is to some extent. But I think we should have broken those links with Pakistan and the Jamaat and tried to build contacts with the other players in Bangladesh.
We should never say where internationalization of domestic politics, what I'm talking about.
For example, Bangladesh, take example of Bangladesh. One of the long grievances that the general mass of Bangladesh has been Tista. Now, Dr. Manmohan Singh, he agreed to sharing of border for Tista. Mamta Didi did not agree. Mamta did not agree. Narendra Modi, when he visited Bangladesh, he also agreed to it. So, this build-up of narrative in Bangladesh that India is not with us has been for a long time. And we have to understand that for these smaller countries which are India-bound, they are not land-bound, they are India-bound. From all areas, it is India. They look at India as an overarching shadow, a big brother code. And we have to ensure that we are fair, but at the same time accommodative. We cannot bend over backwards.
We did that with the Gujarat doctrine. We will give our neighbors more than they will give us.
But dissolutely. But this is where the
And why do you think people in Bangladesh are, if the narrative is correct, anti-India? Because India was the one which was responsible for creating Bangladesh in the first place.
Yes, but also look at the inflammatory statements which are being issued in almost all the political rallies nowadays. The term Bangladeshis in itself is used as a derogatory term.
So do you think CAA played a role?
No, we see, yes, sir. Even if, for example, you have elections in Karnataka, for example, not even sharing border with Bangladesh, there also the term Bangladeshis are used quite often.
For infiltrators.
For infiltrators. Now, there are immigrants as well from Bangladesh. But is the entire terminology Bangladeshi is used in a perverted manner, then how can you expect that diaspora to be receptive to you? It cannot happen. It's like expecting Mexicans to have a good opinion about the US and Trump, where US is using Trump is saying Mexicans are entering. So now elections in Bengal are going to come up in the corner. Look at the number of statements for Bangladeshis. It should be used time and time again.
Assam as well.
Yeah, Assad as well. And then you'll say that why are they against us? They will be against us. If any other country, imagine if China starts using this term that Indians are this, Indians are doing this, they are spoiling. Will we have a positive opinion about them? No. So we need to have a separation of this foreign policy from the chaos that we have in our domestic politics. Chaos in domestic.
But there are more angle, just 1 year angle that, see, SARC got complicated because of Pakistan. India tried to build BBIN and whipstep. The failure of India is to not create an alternative to SARC minus Pakistan. Yeah. They could have engaged with everybody other than Pakistan, but once SARC went down the drain, they were like half-hearted approach with BBIN, half-hearted approach with BIMSTEC. Both did work out, so they said, okay, let them never would go into the drains. This is where India did not look at the US.
But is the initial part of this podcast, you were praising the foreign policy.
So there are two aspects. Our foreign policy vis-a-vis how our energy diplomacy is happening, how our military diplomacy is happening, and vis-a-vis how we've done it with our neighbors is very different. So there are for positives and negatives. The negative would be that it's not just this government. BBIN and BIMSTEC have been in existence for a very long time. And SARC has been was complicated by Pakistan from the beginning.
So, Eddie, you have to understand, sir, that when nowadays India's foreign policy is in so much spotlight because of US. So, when we take a look at ties with US, let's suppose 25 years back, we did not have government to government contact, or some governmental contacts were happening, but then business contact was not there. Defense relationship was absolutely not there. Today, our largest defense exercise partner is US. one of the bigger trading partners that we have is US. So the diaspora is stronger, getting stronger day by day. It is just that final part of the puzzle, which the Oval House. And I don't think anyone in the world has got the key to that person's mind. Because if tomorrow tomorrow let's suppose someone says that I will give you $1 billion for the new ballroom, that will be the best country in the world. Or look at, and there was a detailed report which was furnished that how all the countries have basically catered to this appeasement policy. Qatar giving in an airplane, people giving him FIFA for that matter. FIFA giving him a peace.
Countries investing in Trump's firms, crypto firms. You had Trump, which is
But that's all. Yeah. So, for example, take a look at what happened in Pahalgam.
But why wasn't he given a Nobel Peace Prize? He was the most deserving person.
Venezuela was already on the table, and they wanted to put the spotlight in Venezuela.
He started the fire, they put it out. That is not for putting. He's the problem also at the same.
But he also managed to end a lot of conflicts.
Maybe Norway needs some tariffs now.
Coming to Trump ending conflicts, most of them I don't think they'll last because the root issues are never addressed. When you're using, for example, Hamas, for example, Congo and Rwanda, for example, though they have signed the agreement, the root issues, the ethnic divide between Hutus and Tutsis has never been addressed. Cambodia, Thailand, it has already broken up again. So if you're using just your economic leverage and threatening them to sign a peace deal, I don't think it'll last.
He did think the tariff war also true. The inflation in the US as of right now is
Also, economic parameters are still working for example.
Bills to some extent.
Yeah.
No, for him, maybe the issue was not to force them for a deal, the other countries, but at least force them to come up with some sort of convenience for United States so that voluntarily they will
Just like what South Korea did was the most hilarious thing. Yeah. So when the visit happened to US, so he said that look, I studied your book, The Art of Making a Deal. So now we expect a good deal, and Trump was very happy with this. So this is the kind of a person that we are dealing with.
So maybe we need to train our other followers.
this got an unlikely partner also. China and India for a very brief period were talking the same lines in that regard. And in World History, they said that there are no permanent enemies and permanent allies in this world. The world permanent interests. It is only personal. That's a very charismatic realism as it is called in international relations. But it's an interesting one.
Coming back to the neighborhood, I think the polarization in our domestic politics has created a big constraint. You're talking about Bangladesh, why we couldn't engage with the other parties, or why we treat illegal migration from Bangladesh as such a big issue. So this affects our image abroad. The anti-India sentiments which get built up is largely because of what happens here in India. For example, the racist attacks against Nepalis. It has played a big role in anti-India sentiments in Nepal. So I think that is where we need to fix issues at core.
We need to come down very hard when anyone makes this statement. And this is where the initiative.
How do you come hard on these people? Because that's the rewarding point.
So that is where it has to come from.
And usually those statements come from those in power.
Yeah. So that is where it needs a paradigm.
If every web series is good to be about Northeast politics and Myanmar.
3 back-to-back series.
3 back-to-back series, so Patal Lok to Family, that is also fun.
And which was the third one?
Family Man,
Family Man,
Patal Lok,
Delhi ka hai.
You saved him. Let's hope there is a savior waiting somewhere to prevent the world from descending into chaos and lift the world up, and let there be calm, peace, brotherhood, prosperity for the people. Let's hope for a better 2026. And if you've enjoyed this program, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. See you next year in 2026. Thank you for watching.